listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
How to write about a flowchart. Hello there, IELTS students. In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at describing a flowchart for IELTS Academic Task 1. And in this tutorial, you're going to learn how to divide this writing task 1, into 3 parts. And this is going to help you because knowing what to do will boost your confidence. And obviously, if your confidence is high, then you're going to be writing at a much better level. You're not going to be wasting mental energy on nervousness, on self-doubt and all these other unnecessary energy drains for the exam. Just imagine how much better you're going to write when you know exactly the steps you're going to take when you see the exam question. This is exactly the approach we take with the writing task 2 as well. As soon as you start the course, the writing task course, we give you instructions on how to, well, first of all, we talk about preparation, your study schedule and everything like that. But then we break down the task 2, the whole process, what to do, how to classify the question, step 1, step 2, step 3. And this just frees up so much mental energy. So you can focus on your language skills because all your exam skills are neatly and adequately and supremely taken care of. Right then, let's jump straight into it. Before we do this though, I'd just like to tell all the new listeners, because we're getting a ton of new listeners, about myself. I'm Ben Worthington. I'm from a small town in the UK called Huddersfield, where I used to speak with a Yorkshire accent. I usually tell people as well I'm from Manchester because it's easier to explain, and because nobody's ever heard of Huddersfield, basically. But if you're from the UK, I'll tell you I'm from Huddersfield. But if you meet me and you're not from the UK, I'll tell you I'm from Manchester. It's just easier. Anyway, I left my university in Manchester. I didn't leave. I graduated. I finished. Went to Spain, more or less. Started speaking English. I started speaking Spanish in Spain. I started teaching English. And eventually, I found out about IELTS, and all my students was like, Ben, can you help me with IELTS? Can you help me with the IELTS? And I didn't really have a clue. So this is why I set up the IELTS podcast, so I could interview all the experts. And I did, and I still do interview experts, pronunciation experts, exam writers, ex-IELTS examiners. And I took what they told me and I tested it on my students, and I still do. I test it. If it works, boom, I put it in the course. If it doesn't work, it's thrown out along with all the other internet rubbish that's out there, along with all the other rubbish tutorials that people can find. I don't put it out there. That is maybe could be misunderstood. I just throw it out. I don't put it in the course. I test if it works. If it works, it's in the course. If it's not, it's just deleted and erased from my memory. So that's why we get so many IELTS students thanking us and emailing us. Hey, the essay Ellen marks was perfect. It set me up perfectly for the exam. Or thanks, this is my 9th attempt taking IELTS. I finally passed thanks to your course. So if you are struggling, have a look at that course. And yeah, that's how the IELTS podcast started. And it's been a massive success. It's been an amazing ride. And the ride continues with this exact podcast, with this exact tutorial, all about describing a flowchart. So as you know, IELTS Academic Task 1, you'll be describing a graphic. Is it a bar chart, a pie chart? Is it a natural process? Is it a map? There are a lot of different types. You should prepare for every single type. A few years ago in our preparation course, we did not include a flowchart, and a few students wrote to us and like, hey, if I get a flowchart, I'm not in a good place. And the reason was because we just focused on bar charts, pie charts, and line charts because those are the most common. However, that was a small error because there is still a chance of a flowchart. So now we include a flowchart, a process. So yeah, as I said, the course is constantly getting improved. It's constantly getting tested. So that's why we've got students day in, day out emailing us and coming on the podcast and telling us their success story. Now, let's jump into the flowchart. You're probably going to get a task brief or a question like this. It starts off with, you should spend about 20 minutes on this task. The diagram below shows how many bricks are manufactured. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So immediately, the smart cookies amongst us, the intelligent students, which is probably all of you, hopefully all of you, will have noticed the main features and comparisons. So we immediately know that if we're going to score full points, the main features, what are the main features? Well, that's a perfect excuse, now perfect reason, perfect rationale to use the superlative, because the superlative is going to force you to use the maximums and the minimums, which are probably most likely going to be featured in the main features. And make comparisons. So what do we need to make comparisons? We need conjunctions, comparative conjunctions. This is why those two parts, comparative conjunctions and superlatives, are stressed, and we've got tutorials about them in the Academic Task 1 writing course. Now, it says as well, it could say, write at least 150 words. Now, this is weird because in the official criteria, it doesn't mention anything about 150 words. And likewise for task 2, it doesn't say write at least 250 words. It's nowhere to be seen in the criteria. However, you can download sample essay papers from the official website, and in some of them it says write at least 150 words or write at least 250 words. Anyway, if you're aiming for a 7 or above, which I imagine most of you are doing, you want to be writing around 180 words or about 350 for task 1 and task 2 respectively. Now then, let me just briefly explain the flowchart we've got in front of us. It's titled Brick Manufacturing, and the first image is a digger. What's another word for a digger? It's an excavator. You know, we could even say heavy manufacturing. These are the ones that are made by Caterpillar or JCB, and there's quite a few Asian manufacturers nowadays as well of these big, heavy industrial resource mining equipment. So a lot of synonyms there I just slipped in. Then we move on to basically it's described as a roller and a metal grid, and then there's an arrow adding sand or water, and then the bricks have been pressed, or basically the roller, I guess, is sorting them into by size. They're adding sand and water, and then it comes out as a paste, and they're cut with either wires or put into molds. Then they're put into a cooling chamber, then into a kiln, which is another word for oven. Oh no, sorry, I got it wrong. From the wire cutter or the mold, they are put into the drying oven, then they go into the kiln, then they go into the cooling chamber, and then they're packed, and then they're sent out for delivery. So again, the smart cookies amongst us, I'm flattering you guys today, aren't I? All the smart ones amongst you, which is most of you, will have realized I was using then a lot, which is a very essential word for you to use. And then this, and then that. Obviously, we don't want to overuse it. You can do in spoken English just to emphasize, but as you know, this is a writing exercise. We've got to upgrade our language. So what are we going to say instead? We're going to say subsequently, followed by, previously, or before this, all this sequencing vocabulary that you need to employ. You'll have hopefully as well spotted that I made a mistake because I went from left to right, and then I went from left to right again, which is how we read in the West. If you're in Iran, obviously it's from right to left, or if you're reading Sanskrit's left to right, I think. Anyway, most of the countries, most of the world reads left to right. So in the West, that's how we read. That's how I read this flowchart, but it was a mistake because it goes left to right, then it goes down, and then right to left, then it goes down and left to right. So be careful. Check this. Now then, let's go into how you're going to attack this. First of all, be aware of the direction of the arrows, as you will have probably heard me say. Be aware of the direction of the arrows. Be aware of how many steps there are. This is a useful component to be aware of, because it's going to help you in your introduction. So you're going to start off by saying the graphic shows a manufacturing process with around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, with around 9 stages, ranging from excavation to delivery. Those sentences are essential. They get you off to a good start, and you immediately, you know what you're doing. If you start off with a summary statement, you know exactly what you're doing. So including the number of stages is a very neat way to start the summary. Now then, the next thing you need to be aware of is, are there any points in the process where two things are happening simultaneously or alternatively? So in our chart, now this can be quite tricky to write about. So you want to practice writing about things. So you're going to use vocabulary like, at the same time, the bricks are also cut, or simultaneously, depending on the color of the bricks, for example. Simultaneously, depending on the color of the bricks, they will either be baked or glazed, for example. Now, in our chart, we've got two options. We have the bricks are either going to be cut by wire, or they're going to be placed in a mold. A mold is a shape, a receptacle, like a container, where the liquid or the paste is going to be pushed in, and then the shape is going to be formed. Now, in my flowchart, it said wire cutter. So this is where my use of vocabulary is going to be extremely useful, because I'm going to say where the bricks are cut by a wire. You see, this way I avoid taking words directly from the sheet in front of me. This is essential because I want to get full points for lexical resource. So just to summarize so far, we're going to look at how many steps there are. We're going to pay special attention to the arrows. You're going to learn from my mistakes and not just assume it's left to right, because it can go left to right, top to bottom, and then right to left, and then top to bottom again, and then left to right. Okay? Then we're going to look and make a note of any processes happening simultaneously or alternatively, i.e., is it this way or this way, depending on, obviously, the input. And finally, are there any cause-effect relationships? Your cause and effect vocabulary is also essential for writing task 2. This happens because of this, for example. And so, and then explain why. Anyway, cause-effect relationships. Can you, my friends, effectively explain a cause-effect relationship? This happens because of this. Or this happens, and then it is preceded by this. And then this causes X, Y, Z to happen. So this is all vocabulary that you need. And just to make sure you don't go in there sort of like, and then have an attack, not a panic attack, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you don't get nervous, I strongly recommend you getting to grips with cause-effect relationship, writing about cause-effect relationships, because it's one thing saying, yes, I can write about cause-effect relationships, it's easy, I just use the vocabulary Ben just told me. That's one thing, but another thing is actually sitting down, pen and paper, and writing about it and doing it. Like, for example, I could tell you about my speedboat going 200 miles per hour. If I had a speedboat, I could tell you about that. But it is entirely different experiencing being on my speedboat and going 200 miles per hour. It's completely different, obviously. We can visualize, we can imagine what it's like, but even then we're not even going to get close to the actual experience. And the same is we can experience the same when we're talking about these skills. So I strongly recommend you sit down and you write about this, you try writing about it, and you'll quickly see it's much more challenging than you anticipated. Now the next stage is plan before you write. Be aware of the 4 criteria: task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammatical range and accuracy. So when you're planning what to write, you can brainstorm a few ideas, brainstorm the vocabulary, number your map, and basically start organizing what you're going to talk about. With a flowchart, organization isn't that essential because ideally, or obviously, or logically, you're going to be following the process in front of you. But you do need to be aware of what the examiner is looking for. So when we're thinking about task achievement, okay, you don't just list every single data point or every single point in the chart there, okay? You've got to link it all together, and you've got to also give that clear overview, the one that I mentioned before, and also just catch the main significance of each point. All right, so let's just have a look at an example structure. So we've got the introduction at the beginning. All right, it's just going to give us a very brief overview, probably going to mention the number of stages. We're not going to list every single stage because that's going to be horrible to read. It's an overview as well, so it's just completely unnecessary. But we are going to state the number of stages, and also we're going to probably be paraphrasing the title to some extent. Also, we're probably going to add certain phrases like, and the process ends with delivery. And the process starts, or the brickmaking process starts with excavation and then goes through roughly 9 stages of preparation, I guess we could say that, until finally it is packed and sent off for delivery in a truck, or a lorry, as we say in Great Britain. So there we've got our structure. Then we go into the body, the main body of your writing. In the main body, we're going to go a little bit more detailed, and this is where we're going to start. Instead of saying the bricks are go through a process with a wire cutter, no, we're going to say the bricks are cut by wire, where they then go to a drying oven for between 1 and 2 days. Okay, the bricks are placed in a drying oven where they stay for between 1 and 2 days. In my chart it says 24 to 48 hours, but as I said before, I don't want to use words directly from the question all the time. So where I see an opportunity, I'm going to change it. It's quite a straightforward transformation. I'm going to say they are placed in the oven for between 24 to 48 hours. I mean, between 1 and 2 days. Okay, I'm going to show the examiner I've got a range. Also, as you know, this is where I'm going to use a lot of then, followed by, this process ends, or the manufacturing process ends after between 2 and 3 days of the bricks being in the cooling chamber, comma, whereby they are placed on a pallet for packing. You see? So in that brief description I just gave you, I clearly identified the manufacturing process. Okay, the manufacturing process includes 1, 2, 3 stages. Cutting, actually maybe 4 stages as well, because there's the roller there as well. So that's another good tip actually. If I can classify this main part as the manufacturing process, and then maybe even classify the final stage as the preparation and delivery process, because packing is a form of preparing the product, the final product. So we've got our main body there. We've got a lot of sequence vocabulary, signaling vocabulary, and here as well it's a good idea to use the process starts by excavation, and the process ends with delivery in a truck. Okay, so let's think about the writing process now. So the report, obviously it needs to make sense to the reader, the examiner in this case. We're going to follow a logical sequence, which is obviously, as I said before, the sequence that we find in the flowchart. We're going to use our linking vocabulary, our sequential vocabulary first, secondly, then, after, the next, finally. Also, going to use our connectors such as while, concurrently, and at the same time. Okay, and then also vocabulary. If we've got the two alternatives, we could say alternatively. Now, you are encouraged to use all of this as much as possible, but don't overdo it. Okay, find a balance there. Also, you probably want to find a few synonyms for show, because you're going to be writing about the graphic, and you're going to be saying the graphic shows the manufacturing process. But how many times are you going to be using show? Quite a few. So here are some alternatives: illustrate, depict, demonstrate. Okay? The diagram illustrates the main method by which the bricks are made. Okay? So, yeah. Also, just remember as well not to add any extra information. I see this all the time when I'm correcting essays. For example, if you've worked in a brick factory before, maybe you have, and you know that the drying oven is at, or should be set at 1,000 degrees Celsius, don't add that because it's not on the chart. It doesn't say anything about the temperature on the chart. The temperature is only mentioned when we're talking about the kilns. Kilns, by the way, are big industrial ovens. If we've got the temperature on the chart, then say it. But if it's not there, don't add it. Even if you know it's the rule, even if you know it's the fact, because there's no need to mention it. You're adding information that's there, and that's not part of the task response. Okay. Now then, final point. We want to be using the passive voice as well. Okay, this will help us to write in a more objective, scientific style, which is needed. Okay, while I'm talking about academic writing, this means we do not use contractions. We write going to, or even better, will. We don't say gonna for example. All right. Also, you're going to be using a lot of verbs that describe processes such as do and done and carry out and carried out, for example. So you probably want to find some synonyms of these. For example, with do, there are definitely more specific ones. We could say the bricks are maybe not baked, but we could say cooked. The bricks are heated to extremely high temperatures. Okay, we can't say bake because we only use bake for cakes, for food. All right. Now then, final process. Remember to write about something that might stand out as well. Remember to mention that because, what might stand out about this is that there's only 3 raw ingredients in this process. There is clay, sand, and water. That's it. 3 ingredients. Okay, so you could write something like, what is striking about this diagram is that there are just 3 resources used to create the bricks. Okay, and that just adds a little bit of colour. Also gives you the opportunity to add some more vocabulary in there. What is striking about this process is that there are just 3 raw materials used to manufacture bricks. Now, finally, last 2 stages. Finally, a good way to finish your sentence is to start with overall. We can see that the manufacture of bricks on an industrial scale shows there are 9 or 8 main steps from extraction to the raw material to final delivery. Okay, did we have delivery in the picture? Yes, we did. So we probably want to use a different word. We say, what could we say instead of delivery? To transporting to from extraction of the raw materials to transportation of the finished product. Just to expand our lexical resource. Now then, after you've finished writing, what do we do? Pause, have a think. We check for mistakes. Okay, it's so easy to lose points on silly mistakes. How do you know which mistakes to look for? Well, you've been a smart cookie and you got your essay corrected and you know that, the tenses are an issue. And because you know the tenses are an issue, you're going to go backwards, correcting your work, looking for the use of tenses, trying to identify possible mistakes. And then, what do you do next? Well, you wait 2 weeks or a week, depending on which exam you're taking, and you get your results, you get a band 7, and then you go to university. You go to Canada to emigrate, or you get your permanent residency, whatever. But after doing that, you pass. It's happy days for you, ideally. Okay, that's everything from me today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I enjoyed making it. If you are struggling with the IELTS, please get in contact. You're not in this alone. You don't want to be one of those students taking exam after exam. Have a look at our course. We've got Jump to Band 7, or it's free. Every month we're interviewing successful students who took the course and they're sharing their tips. We're just having a lot of fun correcting the work. We've got the speaking feedback service on available as well. So please get in contact. If you're not there yet and you just want some free IELTS materials, then go to ieltspodcast.com/sign and you can get a big jumbo PDF full of sample essays, a study planner, and all of this free resources. So my name is Ben Worthington. Thank you very much for listening and good luck with your IELTS exam. Just one last thing. If you want an essay correction for free, then send us an email to ben@IELTSpodcast. Put the subject line free correction, and to get it though, what you have to do is identify the accent of this person. Okay? identify the identify the accent of this student, and then send us your answer in an email. Put something like the accent of the student is from Ghana, or is from, I don't know, Germany, wherever. Okay?
Okay, I highly recommend the IELTS podcast services, online courses, also the essay correction services, because I got the score that I wanted through their help, and also very good. You will get a very valuable feedback on your answers, and then you will improve your score in very short time. So I definitely recommend this online course.
Thank you very much for that, Henry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to IELTSpodcast.com.